Coming up, we check out the 2019 Lexus ES 350. I give it the old driving in circles in the parking lot test. And we also test the brakes. You're looking at the 2019 Lexus ES 350. This one is in a color Lexus calls Nebula Gray Pearl, and this one has a couple upgrades in it. 18-inch wheels versus the standard 17, and it's got the full navigation package. The engine is a 3.5-liter V6, making about 302 horsepower. This particular model, as equipped, has a window sticker of about $46,000. It's made in Georgetown, Kentucky, and something that I quickly fell in love with, one of the upgrades on this model is a wood-trimmed heated steering wheel. It also has the full infotainment system with satellite radio, HD radio, Bluetooth, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to take you through some driving experiences in this video, and I hope it's helpful to you. So we're driving this car at night in the rain, and one of the things that I've noticed that we've had a chance to test is the automatic windshield wipers. And for whatever reason, the sensors are not great because we get sheets of water that are pouring down from the roof, and the wipers don't turn on. So now it does do a good job with when it actually starts to rain and drops of rainfall. But when water just streams down, it can literally cover the whole windshield and the auto wipers won't kick on. One nice improvement is the nav system, which, as an owner of the previous model year Lexus, not the ES, but another one, they are moving towards, they're moving away from their own developed app and moving toward things like CarPlay and Android Auto. But this is a very nice map system, and it has cloud updates according to the documentation in the technology manual. So hopefully that means we'll get good road updates at regular intervals. But the actual night view of this nav system is very good, and it's very easy to see. And I just like the layout and the size of this nav screen. They did a good job with that. So we're going to just try, without reading any instructions, to see if we can figure out the navigation system and put in some directions. So I'm guessing that it's that icon, and we could maybe do a search. This is good. Let's try Target. And there's one about a mile away. Oh, look, over here on the right.
Oh, it's up there. No.
And there we go, 1.5 miles.
Target.
And then it's got this little side breakout area that will show you particulars on the directions from where you are. And we'll go. Oh, you could call them? Okay. Like that. Let's give it a go. 3 routes. I'm not going to pick one. We're just going to let it pick for us.
Please proceed to the highlighted route.
There we go.
And the route guidance will start.
So we're approaching our first turn, and we want to see what it sounds like.
Next left at the next traffic light.
Oh, so soothing. You get a little ding. It's kind of like an airline cabin ding.
There it was. Now, I see something down here.
All right, hold on a second. That voice you're hearing or been hearing is my co-pilot, cameraman, car enthusiast / 8-year-old son, who at this point probably knows more about this car than I do. And when he found out I was doing the review, he insisted on going with me. Plus, it gave my wife time to do whatever it is she does when we're not around.
That says we've got 0.8 miles in 2 minutes. There's like a little bar. How long till we get there? We're mostly right there, and we got that far to go. But yeah.
In half of a mile.
Oh,
right
and
turn
it
onto
marks
Columbia
your
Avenue.
turn point on that little red dot right there. There's our destination over there. Oh, and it knows where Chili's is.
So this is the center dash readout console thingy, which used to be traditionally knobs and dials, or I guess just dials. Now it's all digital. And Lexus has kind of a reputation of being very busy with all their buttons and so on, but I actually like this display. There's just a couple pieces of key information. You've got your speedometer and your odometer, with the speed being in the center. That's very easy at a very quick glance to read and know. And then you've got your engine temp and your fuel gauge. And they did a good job with it. It's easy to see. I like it. It's easy to use, and it's fast. And it also has the ability to get to a lot of the other settings that are kind of buried off over here in the corner, so that you can see more if you want to. The car is quiet, so you would expect that from a luxury car, and certainly Lexus has a reputation for that, and this is no exception. But in terms of road noise, it's quiet. You don't get a lot of engine noise, and as a car enthusiast, sometimes I want that. So even in sport mode, unfortunately, you just don't get a lot of engine noise in the cabin. And it's understandable. I mean, if you were going to have a lot of engine noise, a lot of times it's fake or it's artificial. So it's a very quiet sedan, and if that's your thing, they did a good job with that. If you know anything about Toyota or Lexus, Toyota from the time I was little, and this goes way back into the early 80s, Toyota had a digital clock, and they still to this day use the same basic design for that digital clock. Lexus, to set themselves apart as the luxury brand, uses an analog clock that we have here, and they have used that for most of their production years. And it's in all the current model years. The problem that I have with, and this is kind of a theme with Lexus in general, is there's so much stuff crammed into this space that Lexus felt like they had to be true to that clock. And I get it. It is kind of a trademark thing for them. But it's in a really odd place. It works, it's functional, but aesthetically, there's just so many buttons and dials and lights that it's kind of overwhelming. And it almost makes me wish that, even though I know they would have caught heat for not putting that clock in, it makes me wish that maybe they would have left the clock out, because it's a little disturbing where it is. Lexus is kind of a nightmare for minimalists, and I say that because if you're a fan of minimalism, and you get into a car like this, and this is typically true of all the Lexus vehicles, it will give you an aneurysm. You've got so many buttons and just controls everywhere, and if I had any complaint at all about all of this tech, it's just how they chose to lay it out. And so, for example, like this knob here is just to turn the traction control off, and they just thought, well, here, let's put some motorcycle handlebars. I mean, what is this? Like, they literally couldn't find a button location somewhere. They just had to put a traction control adjustment knob up here, I guess. And similarly, this is your sport mode. So you've got sport, normal, and eco. But just the steering wheel and the dash and all over the place, you have just buttons, 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 buttons. And if you're okay with that, once you learn it, it's not too bad. Let's talk about the climate controls for a minute. So Lexus, and this is not unique to this particular vehicle, but most of the Lexus vehicles will give you the option to adjust climate control in the menu. And there is our climate option there. But for those of you that they like to give you more than one way to accomplish the same thing. So those of you that are more familiar with, let's say, for example, the BMW way of doing thing with an analog setup, you've got that here. So it shows you the passenger temperature and the driver temperature, and then you've got your toggle here and here to adjust those temperatures. And this is a nice feature on a car in this price class. You've got the heated seats with fans, so they're vented. You've got the heated steering wheel, and then you've got the passenger heated seat. And the nice thing, and this is just a nice touch that they've done, you can set each one of these to auto, and that means that your heated steering wheel, for example, is not going to turn on if it's 73 degrees in the car and it's 80 degrees outside. But if it gets to be chilly, there's a sensor that tells the particular, whether it's the seat or the wheel, to turn on and off. So that way you don't end up with, a situation where that thing just gets smoking hot on you when it's already quite warm in the vehicle. This is what Lexus calls a touchpad, and they've been kind of back and forth over the past 3 or 4 years on exactly how to interface with all the features in the vehicle. This is one of the ways that they offer. Now, they also offer a tactile knob, and it has a push button and a big dial. And to be honest with you, I prefer that, because this, to me, especially while driving, is much more difficult to navigate. You can adjust the sensitivity, and before anybody cites me out on that, I do know that. However, the one thing that you can never account for is road vibration. So for example, if I'm trying to make an adjustment and I have some road vibration, it's going to affect, and I might potentially false click on something before I'm ready to. And that's the biggest problem that I have with this device. It works well and it's very easy to use if you're stationary, but once you start moving and you're over 15 or 20 miles an hour, this becomes a difficult device. You're always trying to compensate for that road factor, and that I don't care for. Here's a big, well, not a big difference, but here's a difference if you're used to a previous Toyota or Lexus vehicle. Lexus typically will put their speed control on a little stick, a little black stick that sits here. But because of the paddle shifters, they've had to re-engineer that. So they have moved the speed control to the steering column, and it's not bad, it's just different. So pretty much every other Toyota, every other Lexus that I've ever driven, and I've driven quite a few and owned quite a few, your speed control is on a stick. And Toyota's been kind of famously known for keeping that the same for a long time, but they have changed it on this ES. So we're at the bank drive-through, and we've got typical bank drive-through lanes, which makes the car bark at you a little bit. I'm okay with that, but just know that you might have some annoying beeps in the drive-through line from time to time. Here's an interesting feature it's pretty cool. I don't know how practical it is, but it's very cool. And we just happened to notice it. The vehicle has collision avoidance sensors and cameras everywhere, and it is able to pick up stop signs. So, meaning that when you pull up to an intersection that has a red stop sign, there will be a little red stop sign icon on the dash readout. It only works with stop signs. If you pull up to a stop light, that same icon does not appear. So we're gonna try to get an example of the sensors locating a stop sign on the street and posting that stop sign icon, and it's going to show up right here in this little status display area. And I know the footage is probably a little bumpy here. Let's see. Yep, there it is. Look at that. Performance and handling, pretty good. For a car in this class, at this price point, you're not overwhelmed with power. And for most people that are drawn to this class of car, that is okay. you're not going to be able to turn traction control off and smoke the tires for more than a second or two. But it's not underpowered. It's a good, steady delivery of power. There's a slight lag if you hammer the gas, but it's not bad. It's adequate. And honestly, for a car in this price point, you're getting a lot more features for the money in the luxury class than anything else. If you want power, you've got to step up to the next class of whether that's Lexus or BMW or Acura, whoever. You've got to bump yourself up to the next price bracket and you'll get a little bit more power. Braking's good, handling's really good. You feel just enough in the wheel to know that you're driving an actual car. I do like the performance from this car. Again, handling is pretty good, and braking's great also. It will stop you pretty quickly. It's got good stability and brake control. Moving into the back seat, you're looking at the rear console. This is the center console between the driver's seat and the passenger seat in front of you. And I feel like they got this right. This is always kind of a crapshoot from car to car in terms of what they put in these consoles. You do have the ability to adjust airflow there. They don't give you the capability to adjust temperature, which honestly I don't know is that relevant anymore. But they've got the 2.1 amp chargers in the form of USB ports there on the bottom right. That means that it will charge larger devices like tablets and iPads. And then you've got the cigarette plug, the round circular port there on the left that says 12 volts / 120 watts. And that'll charge, you can put an adapter in there to charge just about anything else. So they've got you covered as far as back seat charging goes if you ever need it. Trunk space in the Lexus ES 350 is adequate. In fact, it has room enough for
kids!
This is the part of the video where we get to my opinion. Thus far, I've given you facts and details and sprinkled in a little bit of opinion as far as what I think about those facts and details, but this is full-on opinion time. So as far as this particular vehicle goes, there's nothing wrong with it. If my wife were looking for a luxury car and had somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 to spend, we would test drive it. I would ask her to test drive it. If you're looking for a sedan and you're in sales and you need a car with 4 doors and you have somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 to spend, by all means consider it. That said, I'm not sure how much market segment there is left for these types of vehicles. In the United States, manufacturers have increasingly shifted focus over the past few years away from cars and more towards SUVs and crossovers and those types of vehicles. Sure, it's fine if you need a car. I'm personally not that impressed by the exterior design. It just doesn't look that fantastic to me. If I were going to spend $50,000 on a car, this would not be it, but it's a good car, and if you like how this looks and you're looking for these kinds of features, then by all means, go give one a test drive and see what you think. I'm also personally not a fan of auto manufacturers that build their own brand of infotainment system. This is something that we've talked about at length on the podcast. I feel like your money is better spent on either Apple CarPlay or Android Auto because, well, there's a lot of reasons and you should listen to the podcast for those. That being said, this is an in-between year for Toyota. They have announced that they are moving in that direction, but they still have a void to fill until they can complete it. So just be aware that you are getting a Toyota-built infotainment system, and at some point, if you keep this vehicle for a long time, you're going to have to probably pay for those map updates. Speaking of the podcast, we have a video podcast. You can find it on YouTube in our channel. We also have the video version of that podcast on iTunes, and we have audio-only versions as well on all the podcast platforms like Stitcher and Google Play. So if you enjoyed this video, if you know someone who you think would enjoy this video, please tell them, tell a friend, and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. You can also find more great content on our website or on any of our social media pages. You can see the address there, facebook.com/partscountergurus or partscounterguru.com. Thanks, everybody.